What's going on, everyone? Drake1221 here, and welcome back to the channel. Today I have a very special video planned for everyone. I've gotten an overwhelming amount of responses in terms of what I think of a lot of the new Dragon and Dragon support coming out in Commander Legends Baldur's Gate. Lots of comments on both of my Dragon videos, the Brian Kibler deck and both my personal deck. When I'm going to put out an update for that deck. And, I figured it's kind of inappropriate for me to just throw out an update video beforehand. I don't want to give you guys a deck profile that's just going to change instantly when these new cards come out. And obviously the cards are brand new. I haven't had a chance to test them myself. So I figured what I would do is give you guys a proper analysis of a lot of the support that came out, kind of my opinions, where they could slot in, kind of the potential of some of these cards. So that's what I decided to bring to the table today. But before we get started, as you can see on the screen here, a whopping 112 subscribers. Thank you to all 112 of you for hitting the subscribe button. Looking forward to some of the content I put out. The subscribers, the likes, especially the comments and that kind of engagement. I say it all the time, but it really goes a long way with helping me make videos and kind of do this in my spare time. The second thing I want to touch base on is a TCG player affiliate link. So go down to the description in the bottom, copy that link and paste it into your browser, and then go right up there and bookmark it. And anytime you order any product from TCG player, whether it's Magic singles, Yu-Gi-Oh singles, Pokemon, it could be sealed product, deck boxes, I get a little kickback on that, and all of that revenue goes right back into the channel for different various different things. From lighting to editing software, whatever I could put that revenue in to give all the viewers a better experience. That's what I'm going to do. So please bookmark that link. It doesn't cost you anything extra. It doesn't take any extra time aside from the 30 seconds to bookmark it. But on to the main event of the evening. So Baldur's Gate dropped a few days ago, and there is a crazy amount of Dragon support. I think we could all agree the first Commander Legends set a little lackluster in terms of like the dragons and Dungeons and Dragons, and I really think Wizards delivered here with just a lot of awesome cards. But when you bring a pool, especially a pool of cards or a cycle of cards such as the Ancient Dragons and as well as various other things, there's a lot of dragons that get overlooked. So I picked a handful of Dragon and Dragon support cards from the set, and I just kind of wanted to roll with them through the lens of mainly the Dragon as your commander. Again, you could apply these to any deck in the 99, so to speak. So these aren't through the lens of themselves being commanders, but more through the lens of how they would support the Dragon or really any Dragon tribal deck. So to kind of get started here, the first one we have Ancient Gold Dragon. This is a 7-mana flyer. In the Dragon, it only costs 6 mana. But whenever Ancient Gold Dragon deals combat damage to a player, roll the d20 and create that many number of 1/1 fairy dragons where with flying, where X is the result. So essentially, you slam this on the board. Ideally, it would have haste, and you'll see a theme with all the Ancient Dragons. Like haste is very strong. I think haste and flying are two very just underrated or underutilized, undervalued, whatever verbiage you want to put on it, abilities in Commander, especially someone who pilots something like the Dragon. There's not ever very many flyers on the board, at least in the metas that I play. And haste being something that allows them to hit instantly as soon as they hit the board, giving your opponents minimal reaction time is pretty important. So kind of through that perspective as well. But, if you roll a 10 on this, you're just going to throw 10 1/1s on the board. Why that matters is obviously you have cards like Dragon Tempest, Tear of the Peaks, things that trigger when dragons enter the battlefield. This is really good with something like Kindred Discovery. So there's a lot of synergies because it can put a high number of dragons on the board, right? And when you're rolling a d20, the average roll, the median roll is 10. You can hit 1, you can hit 20, but the average roll is 10. So putting 10 1/1s on the board, even if 5 1/1s with something like Dragon Tempest, you can kind of see how that would get out of hand. So I really like Ancient Gold Dragon. As far as a slot, now 7 mana in most Dragon tribal decks, but 6 mana in the Dragon, you're edging towards the realm of like premium card slot. So right now, I think I'm playing, like, as far as token makers, I'm playing Utvara Hellkite and I'm playing Lathless. I could easily see one of those two coming out in place of Ancient Gold Dragon. I kind of like Lathless just because it costs less mana, but Utvara activates on attack, so I would lean towards cutting Utvara Hellkite for something like this just because it does cost less mana. It doesn't bring bigger bodies to the table, right? I think Utvara Hellkite brings out 6/6s, but this has the ability to bring out more, and when you bring out more with something like Dragon Tempest, it's very good, but on the flip side, if you had something like Terror of the Peaks, the bigger bodies are good. So pros and cons, but I think I would cut Utvara Hellkite for Ancient Gold Dragon, but this is going to slot into my deck. I'm almost positive I'm going to end up playing this card even after testing. Obviously, to continue with the trend, we have Ancient Silver Dragon. So this is another big boy. It's going to cost 8 mana, 7 mana in your Dragon decks. It's a flyer, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you roll a d20 again, and you draw cards equal to the result, and you have no maximum hand size. So again, big dragon, big mana. We are in a premium card slot at 7 mana. So 7 mana draw spell, you ideally would want haste again because you want to draw those cards instantly. But again, average roll here is 10 cards. I'm kind of 60-40 on whether or not I'm going to include this card. I really would like to include it. But again, edging towards the 7 mana slot for a draw spell, so to speak. Oh man, it's going to be hard to slot that in, but the payoff is there. So there are some cards. I'm playing Imrith right now, but that's only 4 mana. Ojutai, only 4 mana. They each only draw 1 or 2 cards, but they're 4 mana. They're half the cost, essentially, right? But obviously the value on a dragon body. So maybe I could see myself cutting something like Rishkar's Expertise. Rishkar's Expertise is 1 less mana. Only going to cost 6. It draws you a bunch of cards. Return of the Wild Speaker costs 5 mana. So this is going to be higher on the curve, but the value of it being on a dragon body is something where I would probably slot that in. So I'm leaning in the realm of 60-40 of including this. Again, do you need to draw 10 cards? You need to draw 15 cards on, turn 7? I don't know. I think it would be good, but wouldn't you just rather be more efficient and value cards? It's tough to say, but I feel like this is a card that's going to go in. Whether or not it comes out, only time will tell. Renari, Merchant of Marvels. So you'll see I've chosen some cards that I personally want to experiment with along the way. So interesting one here, and this comes from me being like a quote-unquote like value town player. I like just cards that just bring something to the table in a way that doesn't seem very good but has a great impact overall. So 4 mana, 1 blue and 3. In the Dragon, it's only going to cost 3 mana, so keep that in mind. So 2/4, but dragons and artifacts, which it does matter at times, they have flash. So now giving all my dragons pseudo haste, right? Giving your opponents in your group minimal time to respond to those dragons is super important. Now, the reason why I don't play something like Vidalcan Orrery is because it costs 4 mana, so it's 1 mana more. But it's kind of a do-nothing card, and then you kind of set up to play it, which I just don't have room for very many cards like that. If I were to play cards like that, I would play like Fiery Emancipation and stuff. But the fact that this comes to the board, and it is a dragon, and again, we go to triggering those dragon tribal synergies, your Dragon Tempest, your Kindred Discovery, the list goes on. It itself doesn't do anything, but it will do something, if that makes sense, with the other cards on the board. If you had, like I said, Terror of the Peaks or Lathless on the board beforehand, it's actually getting value before the actual card comes into play. So I really want to play this. I really want to make room for this. Again, can you imagine having, slamming this on the board maybe early in the game, maybe turn 3, passing, and then it sticks on the board, and turn 4 rolls around and you pass, and at the end of your opponent's turn you just slam Terror of the Peaks, you slam Ojutai, you slam any of your 4 or 5 mana dragons at the end of their turn. It just creates such a dynamic in your favor. And again, can't underestimate the fact that artifacts have flash, right? You have a big dragon on the board, Your opponent passes the turn, you're like, all right, pay 2 mana, slam, Great Henge. And it just gives them less reaction time, and I feel like that's very powerful. So I could tell you, of the not Ancient Dragons, probably my favorite card. Very close. There's another card or two down the list I also am really high on, but man, giving your dragons flash, and this encourages you, right? So with all these new cards, if you look at my current Dragon build, which I'll put in the description, play about 25, 26 dragons, and you can't play a ton because dragons usually cost a lot of mana. What do we have been gifted with recent sets, and in this set is a lot of dragons in the 1 to 3, 4 mana slot. Outside of the Ancient Dragons, a lot of dragons over the last year or so have fallen into that realm, which gives us more reason to play them, because one of the drawbacks of dragons is they just cost 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 mana to cast, and you can't pump your deck with a bunch of 6 mana spells. But now the curve is lowering, so we could actually play more dragons, making this card more viable. I could talk about this card all day just because I love the flash, the pseudo haste, the minimal response. I'm super high on this card. Okay, so another one, no surprise here, Ancient Brass Dragon. So this card costs 7, 2 black and 5 in the Dragon. It's only going to cost 6, which is important, so keep that in mind. Flyer, and when it deals combat damage to a player, you roll a d20, and you return creature cards with total mana value, X or less, where X is the result. So we're working with a median of 10, right? So you hit, you roll a d20, you hit a 10, you take a total mana value of 10 from any graveyards and put those creatures on the battlefield. Again, it's a stunner. I don't know what to say. This card's going to go in my deck, no problem. Where you would look to put this card in, or where you would look to replace it, obviously, the red-black, I'm drawing a blank right now. I worked all day. The red-black dragon that reanimates a dragon on cast is virtually unplayable now because you just play Ancient Brass Dragon, which I'm not currently playing, but I am playing Teneb the Harvester right now. So Teneb the Harvester is 5 mana in the Dragon. When it deals combat damage, you play black and 2, and you can reanimate a creature. So you're 2 bodies, at most, for 8 mana. Whereas for 6 mana, you're 2 bodies or 3 or 4 and whatever power you like. Now, you can hit the 1. You can hit a roll a 1 on this. But hey, I'll bring back my Deathrite Shaman, my Birds of Paradise. If I roll a 2, I'll bring back one of my other mana dorks. There is a low end to this, and there is a very high end of like rolling that 18, 19, 20 and just bringing back 5 dragons or something. But on the low end, it could be worse. And you could choose from any graveyard, which is nice. So personally, I could see this slotting in over to Teneb the Harvester very, very nicely. Again, 1 more mana on the curve as far as casting goes, but then there's no mana investment going forward, whereas Teneb there is. So actually, in retrospect, this is going to cost less. So Ancient Brass Dragon, that is 100% going in the deck and probably will stay for a long time. I just feel like with the Dragon deck, I always try to include like 1 to 3 pieces of just some sort of reanimation or recursion, especially when you're dealing with beefy boys that are just going to want to be dealt with by your opponents all the time. So this is a premium slot. Ancient Copper Dragon, this is the big one. I mean, you can obviously see from the price tag, which is like, this is nuts. I really thought this card would go down a little bit as far as this borderless version. I mean, I'm going to buy it for sure, but I usually wait 2 to 3 weeks before the set releases. That's usually when cards bottom out, but it doesn't really matter. They could put $200 on this card. I'd buy it anyway. It's nuts. So Ancient Copper Dragon is 6 mana. So it's the most aggressively costed of the Ancient Dragons. Now, in a vacuum with the Dragon, it's going to cost 5 mana. So 5 mana, flyer, 6/5, roll a d20. When it deals damage, create that many treasures. So again, on average, you're creating 10 treasures, refunding its cost and some. There's not a lot to say on this. Is it better than Old Gnawbone? I don't think so, because the ceiling is much higher with Old Gnawbone, and the floor is much higher with, if that makes sense, with Old Gnawbone. but why not? You don't have to choose. You just play both. This definitely moves a card like Clouth further down the list in playability, because there's just 3 or 4 dragons you would just play over them that just kind of ramp you when you attack. But yeah, I don't know exactly what this would fill in the shoes for as far as like a 1-for-1 slot. I mean, I could see if you have this and you're playing Clouth and you have like a Gnawbone or something. Yeah, cut Clouth. Any other the Mana Weft Dragon or something like that. Goldspan Dragon. Like, this is nuts with Goldspan Dragon, which you also slot in. Obviously, with recent years, with the treasure thing coming out, you know, there's a lot of treasure sub-theme floating around my Dragon deck. Professional Facebreaker has slotted itself in just because it's card draw and it's ramp on a creature. So there's a treasury sub-theme that goes on with my Dragon deck. Dockside's in there, things of that nature. So obviously this is just kind of a free roll all the way around. And again, you hit, you know, a 1 or a 2 on the low end. I mean, it only costs 5 mana to cast, and if you refunded 2 mana of that back, it's not the worst thing that can happen. Combo this with your haste or your Renari, slamming this at the end of your opponent's turn and then immediately swinging into somebody. It's crazy. All these Ancient Dragons, I think the green one is the worst one, but like all these Ancient Dragons are very, very good. You can't go wrong. This is definitely the best one. Just, I mean, 5 mana in the Dragon. I mean, you feel like you're cheating at that point. But if Wizards is going to print it, I guess we're going to play it. I wanted to touch base on this. This would be more leaning in towards like the budget realm of things. So there's 3 orbs of Dragonkind. There's a blue one that scries if you cast a dragon. There's a green one that gives it hexproof until the end of the turn, which is like, end of turn. I mean, you just pass the table and then just wait, you know, another go around and kill it. But this one's cool because it's a 3 mana rock, adds a red, and if you cast a dragon with it, it gains haste. We talk about how powerful haste is, or I talk about haste and flying, and I'll say it again, super just underutilized in the Commander games, especially in the groups I play. Because I have one group that plays a little bit more casual, one group that plays a little bit more cutthroat, and like in casual, flying is great just because everybody's, you know, slinging creatures on the board, and they may have menace, but not a lot of flyers. And then at a higher power level, there's less creatures in general. And the way you build your deck, I make things a little harder to deal with. So, but giving something haste, I feel like this is the only like playable one. I really wouldn't play any of them. Even like kind of off a budget, if you're looking for just like a 3 mana rock, this is pretty good. And giving things haste for free is not bad. There are definitely better things you could play, but you know, maybe if you're doing mono red like Laughless kind of deck, or like a red green kind of thing, I think this card is playable. I really do. Again, the higher you go in budget, the less desirable this becomes, but solid card all the way around, you know, especially if you're on a budget, like I said. Another one of the cards that I want to play, again, we go with the treasure sub-theme. So this is Ganax Astral Hunter. So it's a 3/4 dragon for 5 mana, but in the Dragon, it only costs 4. So you'll notice, again, the any dragon that costs between like 1 and 4 mana, I'm a bit more lenient on when judging the playability of it, just because being a dragon body, being aggressively costed is very good. So the effect itself, I kind of bend my normal rules and restrictions with, you know. But this is interesting because it costs 4 mana to cast, but it immediately will refund you 1 mana in the form of a treasure. But then when any other dragon ETBs, and that would be a token as well. So if you roll, you know, a 10 on Ancient Gold Dragon, you would get 10 treasures. And if you had Laughless on the board, or if you had a Verakelkite and dragons attacked, you can see again how the treasure thing gets out of hand. Again, I do not know exactly what this will slot in for, but I can tell you I am going to try it out. This is one of those cards that reads really well, but maybe won't translate in the gameplay as good as I hope. But I don't see how you can go wrong with it. I mean, it's going to refund a mana, and then anytime another dragon enters the battlefield, it's going to create you a treasure. So I'm pretty high on this card as well. I think this one has a lot of potential. Obviously not as strong as like the Copper Dragon and things like that, but treasure synergies. Treasures are good. the Goldspan Dragon makes this card insane. Any sort of artifact synergies. I mean, you're just kind of going off the rails. And again, in the 4 mana slot, and then the next turn you play a dragon for 5 mana, that makes a treasure. And then if you make a token, that makes a treasure. And you're just accelerating your plays. And you'll see with things like the Copper Dragon and Ganix and all those ramp cards, you can actually find yourself casting the Dragon much more frequently. Even without these cards, I find myself casting the Dragon more often, which was never really the intent if you watched any of my my previous videos, but I digress. Kind of in the same vein, Swashbuckler Extraordinaire, not super exciting of a card. And again, this is something that I personally want to try and test out just because it seems like it could be really good. Maybe on a budget, maybe off a budget. And I want to get into some of the reasons and similar theme with this. So Swashbuckler Extraordinaire is 3 mana, but in the Dragon only costs 2. So keep that in mind. 2 mana dragon. Those don't exist, really. There's like no playable 2 mana dragon in the game, I don't think. So that has some weight to it. So I want you to think about that. The second thing is, whenever you attack, you can sacrifice any number of treasures, and then as many treasures as you sacrifice, you could choose that many creatures essentially, and they all gain double strike. So this thing can end games for you too, right? So this makes a treasure. So this is effectively a 1 mana dragon in the vacuum of things. It's a 1 mana dragon, triggering all your dragon synergies and your tribal stuff, but it also has the ability just to close out games for you. If you have, 3 treasures on the board and you're attacking with like the Dragon and literally any 2 other dragons, sacrifice these 3 treasures, they all get double strike. Like, the game's over. Could you imagine the Dragon attacking and any of these ancient dragons, giving them double strike? It's just, the ceiling can be so high. And I think on a budget or even off a budget, the fact that it is, essentially 1 mana with the flexibility. I'm also really high on this card. Again, I could just be over evaluating and over analyzing it, but for 16 cents, I'm definitely going to try this card out. I've purchased most of the stuff from this set, the little things. It's basically just the big ancient dragons. I'm trying to wait to see where they settle in the next couple of weeks, but man, I could see how this would get nutty. Even with the 1 treasure. Let's say you cast this thing on turn 2 and that treasure chills there for, 3-4 turns. Or maybe, again, we talk about floor and ceiling. When's the card at its worst or when is it at its best? You can cast this thing turn 10, right? And immediately giving your best dragon double strike. I just don't really see the downfall in a card like this, especially if you're... I can see this card not being good if you don't have a consistent flow of treasures in the deck, right? Some treasure sub-theme or treasure synergies. But the fact that I am, and I'm going harder in that realm, I really don't see if this card is bad. But if maybe you're on a different budget, you don't have all those treasure synergies, I can see it just kind of stalling out on you. But at the worst, it's 2 mana dragon. So, Earthquake Dragon. I want to try this card out, but just there's so many good dragons out there. It'll probably get cut. This card gives me Sign of Draco vibes. So this is 15 mana value card, 14 in a green, but it costs X less, where X is the total mana value of all dragons you control. Flying Trample, and then you can pay 3, sack a land, return it from the graveyard to your hand, and it's a 10/10 beefy boy. So ideally, you would want 14 mana value on the board to make this 1 mana. I can see where that could happen, but if you already have 14 mana of dragons on the board, kind of already winning. And yeah, it's a 1 mana 10/10, but again, it's just kind of a 10/10 big dumb flyer with trample, which how much damage can it do? I definitely like it in the realm of things. I just think it won't make the cut for me. I can see scenarios where this is very good, and even if you paid, let's say you have 2 5/5s, call it 10 mana. This thing still costs 4 with the Dragon on board. That's actually not terrible. If you can cast this for 4, I'd be happy with that as well. But again, this is one of those cards that would need some testing. But if you could cast this for 4 mana or less, because again, the Ur-Dragon is going to discount it by 1 no matter what. I think it has some weight in there. Again, that 1 to 4 mana dragon slot, we're pretty flexible on as far as playability, just because we want cheap dragons that do something. We don't want to just settle for anything, but it is a slot that we're a bit more aggressive with filling. So I think this has potential, but the variance on it is too much, because what if this card's in your starting 7? It's a rough. You're down a card. Mulligan that hand away, right? Even if you draw this card turn 4, 5, or 6, I mean, I can see how this would really clog up your hand early game, and make things a little clunky for you. It'd be cool if you could like reanimate it. Maybe you have a different sub theme going on. I don't want to spend too much time on him because, like you said, it's here nor there. But I could see where it can be good, but I just don't know if it's good enough. Scaled Nurturer. So this, like I said, this is very close to my favorite. Renari, one of my other favorites, but Scaled Nurturer, I kind of want to break this down a little bit. It's so simple, but so cool, so good. So 2 mana, so 1 green and 1, but the Ur-Dragon will discount it. So it's 1 green, 0/2, tap to add a green, and when you spend this mana to cast a dragon, you gain 2 life. So you could spend the mana on anything, but if you just so happen to cast a dragon, you gain 2 life, right? So what else in the game costs 1 green and adds a green? Every version of Llanowar Elf out there, right? So this is essentially a Llanowar Elf for the deck, but it's a dragon. I want to play this card. I'm a softie for mana dorks. I love mana dorks. I like the Birds of Paradise, the Llanowar Elves of the world, the Deathrite Shamans, all those 1 mana dorks. I love to play those. And I'm obviously playing a bunch of them, not a bunch, a handful of them in my Ur-Dragon deck now, but having a dragon that costs 1, but is a mana dork, I feel like it has a lot of weight in the deck. Again, lower on the curve, triggering our dragon tribal synergies, but it's a mana dork. It's a mana dork that's an actual dragon, which is crazy to me. And it only costs 1. Maybe I'm over-evaluating this card, but I think this card's a slam dunk, and I'm going to slot this card in my deck. The only downside to it is there's no like etched foil version or alternate art. We have the basic common right now, but I can't stress the fact enough. It's a 1 mana dragon. It's a 1 mana dork for dragons, if that makes any sense. Not much else to go from there. I'm super high on this card too. It's going to find its way in my Ur-Dragon deck. The next card we have Lozhan, Dragon's Legacy. So this is an interesting one. I want to slot this in. I just don't know how many effects like this we actually need in the deck. So 3 mana, 1 blue, 1 red. So the Ur-Dragon's only going to cost 4. But whenever you cast an adventure, which doesn't matter, or dragon spell, this card deals damage equal to the spell's mana value to any target that isn't a commander. So, whereas Dragon Tempest deals damage equal to the number of dragons, Terror of the Peaks deals damage equal to the power, Scourge of Valkas deals damage equal to the number of dragons as well. This is a different one on the scale. It takes the mana value of cards and deals that damage to something. So, very good. I do like that ability a lot. The fact that it can't target commanders is a larger downside, I believe, than you would think, just because everybody's deck is built around their commander. Sometimes, especially in those faster play groups, you have commanders hitting the board on turn 2, 3, 4, you know what I mean? You have those cheaper, smaller commanders, things like Animar, things like Crick. I have, like Bray on my play group, Goblin Tribal. Those things hit the board early. And if this is kind of in your removal slot, so to speak, you can't really deal with those things. So that does hurt probably a little more than at the surface. But you take that out of the equation, it is another version of Terror of the Peaks or Dragon Tempest or Scourge of Valkas, where just by playing dragons, you could just nuke stuff or just throw damage to somebody's face. So I really like that ability. I want to slot this in. This teeters on the edge of, does it make the cut, and do we need another version of that card in the deck? I don't know. Again, I'd want to look at it, piece it out, do some testing, but it has potential, it has playability, and I think, you know, you slam the Dragon on the board and you're dealing 9 damage to something. You slam any of these Ancient Dragons on the board, you're dealing 5, 6, 7. And it is the mana value of the card, not what you casted the card for. So you can go back to something like Earthquake Dragon. You can cast this for 1 mana, but it's going to deal 15 to something. So I think it does have some synergies in that realm. Definitely playable, definitely on the radar, and definitely a good pickup for 40 cents. And this one here we have Miriam. You can pronounce it any way you want. It's a fake name. Sentinel Worm. So this is Teamer in 3. So in the Dragon, it's only going to cost 5. Flying, Ward 2. And whenever a non-token dragon enters the battlefield, you make a token copy, and it isn't legendary. So this card is awesome. Do I know exactly what it's going to slot in for? No, it's not as cut and dry as like some of the Ancient Dragons where they easily can replace something that's, you know, less mana efficient. This is unique, and that's what makes it awesome. There's not a ton out there that you get rewarded for as far as Dragon Tribal to clone things, because there's a lot of legendary dragons out there. And just cloning them isn't very efficient because they're legendary, and then you're jumping through hoops to make them. Now, I don't know, it gets crazy. But just by playing dragons, they're going to duplicate those dragons. So there's some really cool lines of play with this card. I don't have any like wonky like infinite combos or anything like that come to mind. But, I mean, there's some cool lines of play where you have this, and maybe you cast Hellkite Courser to make a copy of Hellkite Courser, which doesn't really matter. But that brings out the Dragon, makes a copy of the Dragon. And if you had like Terror of the Peaks or Dragon Tempest on the board, then you're just nuking things. Or if you had Lozen, you're just nuking things. Then if you had a Haste Enabler on the board, then you're swinging with all those. I mean, it gets pretty nuts. You know, I could see, you know, cloning any of, obviously, these Ancient Dragons. Cloning, even if you had this on board and you dropped Scaled Nurture, and I've gotten 2 Mana Dorks, pretty cool play. A lot of other things that probably aren't coming to my head right now. Vivicus Asmati the Dyer, one of my pet cards. Having 2 of those on the board would be awesome. No threat would stand in your way. Single target removal for days. And you're flipping big permanents, hopefully. So, obviously, the card reads as good as it probably plays. So this is going to slot in. It also has, I don't know if I touched base on it, protection built in the form of Ward 2. So that will deter your opponents from dealing with it. I like this card a lot. Really good design. And the last card here is Ancient Bronze Dragon. The least exciting of the dragons. So 7 mana, 6 mana in the Dragon. Whenever Ancient Bronze Dragon deals combat damage to a player, roll a d20. Put X 1/1 counters on each of up to 2 target creatures where X is the result. So if you roll a 10, you can distribute 10 + 1 counters amongst 2 different creatures. I just don't really see this slotting into a Dragon Tribal style deck. I can see this slotting into other decks, things that, you know, where +1 counters matter, you know, that nature. I just don't see the value of putting counters on things when the dragons are already big. Making them bigger doesn't make any sense. So again, I'm probably not going to play this card. I'm definitely going to snag a borderless version for the collection, but I don't think I'm going to play it. And that's just kind of where I stand on that. So we kind of ended on a little bit of a low note with something that's not super exciting, but you can hear the excitement when it comes to things like Miriam and Scale Nurturer, Swashbuckler, some of the Ancient Dragons. Where is this guy here? I don't know. I think I closed the tab. Ganix. So lots of really good dragons, lots of really, really good support in this set. I'm super excited to round this out for you guys. You can expect an Dragon update sometime in the next couple weeks. I want to accumulate the cards, slot them in, get a little bit of testing in, fiddle around with some stuff. But in the meantime, in the description, like I said before, you can catch the most current version pre-Baldur's Gate. Again, the last thing is, guys, I do appreciate it again. Liking, commenting, subscribing to the videos. It means a lot to me. Again, I also have some more videos on the horizon. I feel like I try to schedule what I want to do with the video, but there's just always something new and like coming out, and it's like, oh, I got to profile this deck now before it becomes old news, or I got to bring to light these cards before they become old news. So I've been trying to profile my Sliver deck for like 3 months now, and everything kind of gets pushed in the back burner when it comes to that. So that's going to come shortly. My Yurko deck, I know I posted an update video about a month ago, but that deck, I wanted to power it up. So that deck went through a lot of different changes. I got a request for Sisay deck. So sometime down the line, I would want to put that together for a subscriber. But there's a lot of cool stuff in the works. I do want to get an in-person deck profile done here at some point. It'll probably be my Dragon deck. It very well can be my Sliver deck or a different deck. But that's really all I have for you guys. Again, I appreciate the feedback. Please bookmark that link. That way I can get, some support and some funds kind of funneled in the channel to upgrade some things. I do have a day job, but this is more for fun, and I'd love to give you guys the experience you deserve. So it doesn't cost you any money. It doesn't cost you any extra time. Remember, please comment, subscribe, like the videos. I like all that, and have a great day.